She didn't leave loudly. She didn't slam doors or scream your name. She just became quiet, colder, distant. And suddenly, the woman who once leaned into you now feels like a stranger standing across the room. That silence you feel? It's not empty. It's speaking, louder than anything she could say. Sometimes, when a woman distances herself, a man's instinct is to chase harder, to fix, to prove, to pull her back. But what most don't realize is that her distance is not always a rejection. It's often a response, a reaction to something emotional, something subtle, something unspoken that shifted inside her. And if you misunderstand that moment, you don't just lose her attention, you lose her trust. Distance rarely begins with miles. It begins with a feeling, a subtle shift inside her that you can't immediately see, but you can definitely sense. One day she's warm, open, emotionally present, and the next, something feels off. Her replies are shorter. Her energy feels guarded. And you start thinking she's pulling away physically, when in reality, she already stepped back emotionally long before that. A woman doesn't just wake up and decide to disconnect. It builds quietly. Maybe she felt unheard in small moments. Maybe something you said or didn't say created a gap. Maybe she started feeling like her emotions weren't safe to express anymore. These things don't explode, they accumulate. And when they reach a certain point, her heart begins to withdraw to protect itself. This is why focusing only on her physical behavior, like texting less or canceling plans, can mislead you. Because those actions are just symptoms. The real change happened internally. Her emotional connection weakened first, and everything else followed. What makes this more complex is that she may not even explain it clearly. Not because she wants to confuse you, but because emotions are not always easy to translate into words. So instead of communicating directly, she creates space, not as punishment, but as a form of emotional self-preservation. And if you misunderstand this moment, you might react in a way that widens the gap. You might try to fix what you can see instead of understanding what you can't. The truth is, if you want to reach her again, you don't chase her physically. You reconnect with her emotionally. Because that's where the distance actually began. When a woman starts to pull away, the natural instinct is to close the gap as quickly as possible. You text more, call more, try to be more present, more available, more everything. It feels logical. If she's drifting, you move closer. But emotionally, it doesn't work that way. Because what feels like effort to you can feel like pressure to her. Attraction needs space to breathe. It grows in moments of ease, curiosity, and emotional freedom. But when you chase, you unintentionally remove that space. Your constant reaching, your need for reassurance, your urgency to fix things, it starts to feel heavy. And instead of feeling drawn back to you, she feels like she has to escape that weight. Chasing also shifts the emotional balance. It places you in a position where you're seeking validation and she's in a position where she's being asked to provide it. That imbalance slowly weakens attraction because desire doesn't thrive when one person feels responsible for the other's emotional state. And here's the deeper layer. When you chase, you're reacting from fear. Fear of losing her, fear of being replaced, fear of not being enough. She may not consciously analyze it, but she feels it. And that energy doesn't create connection. It creates discomfort. This is why pulling back is not about playing games or pretending you don't care. It's about removing the pressure you unknowingly created. It's about allowing her to feel your absence instead of your urgency. Because attraction isn't built on how hard you pursue. It's built on how she feels in your presence. And if your presence feels overwhelming, she won't move closer, no matter how much you try. Silence, when used with awareness, is not distance. It's alignment. When emotions become unbalanced, when one person is leaning in and the other is pulling away, something needs to reset. And often, words only make it worse. Over-explaining, over-texting, over-trying, it creates noise. And in that noise, connection gets lost. A man's silence in that moment is powerful, not because it manipulates, but because it stabilizes. It removes the emotional pressure that was building between both of you. Instead of reacting impulsively, instead of trying to force clarity, he chooses stillness. And that stillness gives both people space to breathe again. When you stop filling every gap with words, something interesting happens. The emotional imbalance begins to correct itself. She no longer feels like she's being pulled, questioned, or expected to respond in a certain way. The tension softens, and in that space, her own thoughts become louder. Silence also communicates something deeper than words ever could. Self-respect. It shows that you're not dependent on constant reassurance, that you're not trying to control the situation, and that you're comfortable standing in uncertainty without losing yourself. That kind of emotional composure is rare, and it shifts how she sees you. But this silence is not about being cold or punishing. It's not about ignoring her to teach her a lesson. That kind of silence creates more distance. This is a calm, grounded silence. One that says, I'm here, but I'm not chasing. And in that calm absence, balance returns. She starts to feel the difference, not through what you say, but through what you no longer need to say. Self-control is one of the most quietly powerful signals a man can give, especially in moments of emotional uncertainty. When a woman pulls away, the situation naturally triggers reactions, confusion, frustration, even fear. And most people respond to those emotions immediately. They text impulsively, demand clarity, or try to regain control of the situation. But true emotional strength is revealed in the ability to not react right away. Self-control means you feel everything, but you don't let it control your behavior. You don't chase out of fear. You don't argue out of frustration. You don't beg for attention out of insecurity. Instead, you pause. You observe. You give yourself time to understand what's really happening beneath the surface. To a woman, this kind of composure feels different. It feels safe because she's not dealing with someone unpredictable or emotionally reactive. She's experiencing someone who can hold his ground without creating chaos. And that stability is deeply attractive, not because it's flashy, but because it's rare. When you maintain self-control, you're also protecting your own value. You're not placing your emotional state entirely in her hands. You're showing that your identity, your confidence, your peace, they don't collapse the moment something shifts in the relationship. That sends a powerful message without a single word. And here's the deeper truth. Self-control creates clarity. When you're not reacting impulsively, you can see the situation for what it is. You can respond with intention instead of emotion. And that changes everything. Because strength is not about forcing outcomes. It's about mastering your response when things feel uncertain. Words can be carefully chosen, rehearsed, even perfected. But energy cannot be faked for long. A woman doesn't just listen to what you say. She feels how you say it, the intention behind it, the emotional state it comes from. You might say, "I understand," but if your tone carries frustration, she senses it. You might say, "Take your time," but if your energy feels impatient or anxious, she picks up on that too. This is why many men feel confused. They believe they're saying the right things, doing the right things, yet something still feels off. That something is energy. It's the invisible layer of communication that speaks louder than any sentence. Your presence, your calmness, tension, your neediness, your confidence. These are all signals she reads without effort. When your energy is grounded, steady, and emotionally composed, it creates a sense of safety. She doesn't feel pressured, judged, or rushed. Instead, she feels space to be herself, to process her emotions without being pulled in a direction she's not ready for. But when your energy is anxious, seeking validation, needing reassurance, it creates discomfort. Even if your words sound supportive, your underlying state tells a different story. This is why controlling your inner world matters more than controlling your words. Because she's not responding to your script. She's responding to your state. And your state is always honest. When you focus on being centered rather than convincing, everything shifts. You stop trying to say the perfect thing, and instead, you become someone who naturally feels different to be around. And that feeling is what stays with her long after the conversation ends. Giving space is often misunderstood as losing control, when in reality, it's one of the most powerful ways to restore it. When a woman begins to distance herself, the instinct is to close the gap immediately. But when you do that, you remove the very thing that allows emotions to reset space. Without space, everything feels forced. With space, everything has a chance to breathe again. Curiosity cannot exist where everything is constantly available. When you are always there, always reaching, always responding instantly, there is no room for her to wonder about you. No room for her to feel your absence. An absence, when it's calm and intentional, has a unique way of bringing clarity. It makes her notice what's no longer being given so freely. When you step back, not out of pride, but out of understanding, you create a shift. She is no longer reacting to your presence. She starts reflecting on it. She begins to think about how you made her feel, what your energy brought into her life, and why that feels different now. This is where curiosity quietly rebuilds itself. Respect grows in a similar way. It's not built through chasing or over-explaining. It's built through emotional independence. When you give her space, you show that you are not trying to control her choices or emotions. You trust the process. You trust yourself. And that kind of grounded confidence naturally commands respect. The key is intention. Space should never feel like punishment or silence filled with resentment. It should feel calm, steady, and self-assured. Because when space is given from that place, it doesn't push her away. It gives her a reason to come closer, on her own. When a woman pulls away, what she's really doing is protecting something inside her. It's not always about you doing something wrong. Sometimes it's about her feeling overwhelmed, unheard, or emotionally disconnected. Her distance is emotional before it ever becomes physical. And if you react only on the surface, you miss the deeper message she's sending. Most men panic in that moment. They text more, call more, try harder. But chasing her doesn't bring her closer. It pushes her further away. Because what she feels in that moment is pressure. And pressure doesn't create desire, it kills it. The more you try to fix her distance, the more she feels like she's being cornered emotionally. Now, here's the one thing that changes everything. You step back, not out of ego, not out of anger, but out of understanding. When you choose silence, not coldness, but calm silence, you shift the dynamic. You stop feeding the tension. You stop proving. You stop chasing. And in that stillness, something powerful happens. She begins to feel the absence of your energy, not your desperations. Because a man who can control himself in emotional chaos is rare. Self-control is not weakness. It's strength. When you don't react impulsively, when you don't beg for attention, when you don't try to force connection, you show her something deeper. You show her that your presence is grounded, not needy, that you don't crumble when things get uncertain. And women feel that. They don't just listen to what you say, they observe how you are. Your energy, your reactions, your emotional stability, that's what speaks to her. So when you step back and give her space, you're not losing her. You're allowing her to feel again, to wonder, to notice the shift. And curiosity begins to grow where pressure once existed. She starts asking herself questions she wasn't asking before. Why is he not reacting? Why does he feel different now? Why do I suddenly miss his presence? And that's where respect starts to rebuild. Because attraction isn't forced. It's felt. And sometimes the strongest move you can make is to do nothing at all.